Hey Liz,
Hi, Liz.
how you
Hey.
doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Nice to be here. Nice to see you all.
Like
Yeah.
was
And I was realizing as you were speaking about kind of like a tool and adding, like a rubber handle to,
yeah.
a screwdriver or whatever. And you were saying like it's no failing, like needing a different tool is not a failing. And what I realized, as I felt it in my body, is like having a need is a failing. Of
Mm,
like
Yeah.
having a need and having it be different. Like there's so much that's like be the same, fit in, make it easy. Do not, yeah. So don't have a need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I see you both nodding and I'm curious.
Yeah, but it's what we talked about at the workshop, at the mind body integration workshop. That it's that coding that we have had. Do you remember when I talked about that at some point in our childhood we are at a crossroad where we can either um feel our body, but then we have to give up the relationship, or we have to maintain the relationship and then we need to give up the body. We can't have both because we don't have that ability at that point in our lives. So, what you're talking about is when you have chosen the relationship over needs. So you let the example I normally use is that you're 2 years old, you're lying in bed, you have your diaper is wet and you're crying. Mom and dad is sitting and watching TV. They simply can't hear you. They're loving parents, but they can't hear you. So you're lying there with a wet diaper. You don't know it's a wet diaper, but you can feel discomfort. If they don't hear you, you have to shut off from the body, from that discomfort that you feel in the body to maintain the relationship to mom and dad. So you still see them as gods in your life. And when they come in the morning, you're going to smile and be happy because you're maintaining the relationship and not feeling the body. That is what has happened when you experience exactly what you talk about. So your test now is to start to open up for your needs, and it's all the small needs. It's like going to the bathroom and pee when you need to pee. It's having a sip of water when you're thirsty. It's taking on a jacket off a jacket. It's like going to have mental rest when you need that, or go to sleep when you need that. It's really meeting all your needs from a very, very basic point. And that's what we do in the third fetter. You have a full list, 10 things that needs to be met in our basic needs. And it's also like um spiritual development, intellectual development. It's all of those things that needs to be met. That if they had not been met, you need to meet those now and really start to explore how you can feel a need arising and meeting it right away, as if you're your loving parent. It,
Yeah.
it is it is extra difficult for late diagnosed people because we, like we talked about with Claire, that we just don't fit in the square room. So even when we have a need, it's never going to be a need like the square ones have a need, because we have round needs, not the square needs. So we have needs of um, not socializing, for example, or we have needs of needing a certain spoon or fork to eat from, or we have needs of our food not touching and we need soft clothes on. And no, I can't wear that color today, or these shoes are Tuesday shoes. There's so many things that count as needs for us to feel comfortable that are round needs. They're not square needs. So you cannot talk to a square person about it. And if you are trying to mask as a square person, you know what I mean when I say Tuesday shoes, because like we have very specific rules for when we do things. A neurotypical person wouldn't know what you mean. I mean, when it's wet, you have some shoes. When it's not wet, you have other shoes. That's about it. But that the world is not that simple for autistic people and ADHD people. There are certain things that meet needs in different ways than than for neurotypical people.
I think
Yeah.
also
Go ahead.
that, well,
Mhm.
that I was going to come from a slightly different angle
Yeah,
too, that we have, especially in the spiritual community, maybe some flawed ideas about needs in general. I know
Yeah.
coming from a Buddhist background, you get the idea that it's like you should be able to just do without. And if it feels like I need that thing, well, that's an attachment that you need to work on so that you can relinquish it, so that you can then be completely free from any need for anything. And it's I think the problem is that we have to detach from the idea of a need as being something of its own category. Um, we define needs in a rather arbitrary way. Like even monks would say they need to eat, right? It might be that they only eat what's given to them in alms as offerings, but they don't question the fact that if they don't eat, they won't survive. So it's like that need is acceptable because it's like base level survival. But everything that we do in terms of our way that we define what we need or want is this kind of arbitrary distinction that society helps shape. So in a monastery, you're told, it's okay to need a robe, it's okay to need an offering bowl, and that's basically it. That's, you need water, you need food, and that's the extent of what you're allowed to need. But it's still a need. It's still accepting that there are things that we need as human beings living, in order to maintain life. And then as, householders, as lay people, we kind of set those standards for ourselves of how much do we need for comfort, how much can we do without, how much am I attached to, this is useful but then I can live without it if it goes away, do I need to get a new one? All of that is for each of us to decide, to find out in our own experience what we actually need to survive and how we can move with the ebbs and flows of life. The idea of not having attachment to things is very important in terms of everything is impermanent. So there is going to be a time where we could lose everything. And it is helpful to know that we have that stability in us, to have the equanimity to be able to deal with all of those ebbs, flows, and changes that may or may not happen. But it's also important that we don't vilify the idea of a need and make it into this other category where it has, in that kind of seventh fetter way, a whole other life of its own where it's kind of, anathema. It's like we're not allowed to talk about having a need because it's all kind of shameful to have a need for anything. It really comes down to an individual perspective of finding for yourself, what do you need to be your most effective being
Mm.
in this moment for whatever your goal of life is. For somebody else who isn't on the spiritual path at all, their list of real requirements for survival are going to be
Very
one thing.
different.
It's probably going to be very different. But it's to undercut that idea that a need itself is a problem. Because
Mm.
like when you said, it's that idea that like I have a need, that is an issue. It's getting away from that because that is making that idea of a need into something that it's not. Everybody, even the most austere monk, has a need. They still sleep at some point. They still eat and drink at some point. There are some base level needs that you just cannot strip away. Everything else is an arbitrary designation of where we draw that line. And there is no right answer for that.
Mm.
So it's really finding for you, what are the needs that you need to support yourself to be the best version of whatever this is in this moment. And that's just for your own exploration.
I also just want to circle back to what that was absolutely wonderful and brilliant, and I love that bringing into the conversation that everybody has a need, and there's nothing wrong with having a need. It's
No,
the attachment to the need.
exactly.
But that is like a full talk
Yeah,
on
yeah,
its own.
yeah.
But I just want to circle back to what we talked with Debbie about. That it's also acknowledging that no matter if you're neurodivergent or if you're neurotypical, that we all have things that kind of makes us on par with other people.
Mm.
Um, for me, for example, it's important for me to have certain clothes on that is either very very tight or is very very loose. And some days I need very very tight clothes, and other days I need very very loose clothes. And if I have tight clothes on a day where I need loose clothes on, I cannot hear. And I know that sounds weird, but I cannot understand what is said, what people say, because my physical discomfort is bigger than anything else, and I cannot comprehend what people say. I don't understand. So for me to be on par with everybody else that have a hearing, I need to meet the need of what type of texture I can have on my body today. Otherwise, I'm not on par with everybody else that are able to hear. So it's also acknowledging that when you say, but this is too demanding when I have a need, also notice if what you deem as demanding is just bringing you to a zero baseline.
Yeah.
It's like if you're having a political discussion with someone and you get a fly in your eye, you cannot maintain that political discussion because the fly needs to get out of your eye first, right? It's like you getting to the baseline of zero until you can continue that conversation. So the fly is out. What did you say? And then we can continue, right? So it's also noticing that when we demonize ourselves for having needs, are those needs bringing you to a baseline of zero? Because then you cannot demonize yourself for that need.
And then also just be aware of, in case anybody's listening to this and is then going, okay, yes, but I need a soda every, 3 hours, and I need, you know,
Like they all did with the
yeah, yeah,
with the what's it called, donuts.
yeah, exactly. But I need the donut right now. It is very important to then investigate each of those and see how much is the want and how much is an actual need. How much is it
Baseline of zero when I have
exactly.
these donuts.
I'm in a donut deficit and I need to be brought up to a donut zero. There's a donut baseline that we should all be at every day. So, but it's fine. Like, so if I don't do this thing, what is the repercussion?
Yeah.
What is the if I don't provide myself with fill in the blank need that you question, or that you feel bad about having. If I don't, is it that I'm going to crave the thing and think about it all the time, or that I'm going to have to sit with an emotion that I really am uncomfortable sitting with, or something like that? In which case, well, then maybe that's a 4 or 5 issue that you actually could investigate. Maybe there's something there that it's not so much a need as it is a diversion and a deflection from something, or some habitual habit that's just been, ingrained, and there's work to be done with that. But if it's something that you really are in some way negatively affected by not having this thing, that there is like a real need for your basic functionality to have this thing, for you to be the best possible being that you can be in this moment, then that's something to consider, that's probably something that is much more a necessity for your life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a personal exploration where we can't say that a donut is definitively not in need. Maybe we can, but we can't. Everybody has to find their own line.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. I appreciate the spectrum and the nuance. And it'll be, that the donut deficit and the fly in the eye, and I can kind of put them on the scale and feel into
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Liz. Thank you for
Thank
bringing
you
that
so
up.
so good seeing you.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
precious to see you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.